Dear AP Physics students, hope you're all doing well. As you can see, I'm doing fine too, but I'm following doctor's orders and trying to recover from surgery. It's kind of hard for me. I'd rather be there with you. Um, I'm scheduled to be out until September 11th, but I will probably be back before then because it's kind of driving me crazy being at home. Okay. While it stinks that I'm here at home instead of being with you, I'm sure that you're a little bit concerned about what you're missing or whatever. And this is actually, if I'm going to be out, this is the best time to be out because right now you're not really learning physics. You're learning about how we do things in class. For instance, in this unit, you're kind of learning the ins and outs of how I teach. I don't lecture. I don't give you equations to memorize. I don't really give you formal notes. So you might be thinking, well, how does this work? You know, do I have to teach physics to myself? And that's not what you do. We learn physics together through discovery. Okay. So you might be wondering, well, you know, why do I do things this way? Well, I didn't always do things this way. I used to be a lecture teacher. And then about 14 years ago, I discovered a different way, this discovery way. And the research said that it did really well. And so I tried it myself, went all in. And from my own results, I found out students did much better this way. Now, some things you should know is if you're the type of student who is kind of a quiet person, those students sometimes have a little bit of trouble because they're kind of the people watcher. They watch other people, but they quietly get the A, so they're really good at the school game. Physics is kind of a hard thing. It's not something that you can just memorize stuff. You have to really be engaged, and that's why this discovery works better. And so those are the students who kind of do have a little bit of a problem because they have to get out of their shell. They have to kind of get out of their own head. You have to be kind of vulnerable a little bit. In other words, there's going to be times, I don't care how smart you are, where you're like, I don't really know. You might even kind of feel frustrated. Well, he didn't teach me anything, so how would I know? That's okay. You have to be willing to look foolish and say, hey, I think this because of this, and just have the discussion. The way you learn is by making little mistakes and make it in groups where you feel comfortable with it. Hey, this person isn't going to make fun of me or anything. Okay, that's how you learn best. Okay, I know it's really weird for you because you're used to going to class and just learning through lecture. That is not how you learn physics the best. And I'll be glad to show you the statistics at the end of the year, but I know you're not concerned about that. You just want to, whatever, do well on the test. You want to go into engineering or whatever it is you want to do. You want to be a doctor. And I know, so you're not really interested in that. But I'm telling you, you have to be engaged. You have to be talking with your partners. You won't know the answers. You need to say sometimes, well, I think this and because of this. And that's the way it's going to kind of work in here. So really the only danger is you're going to find out that, hey, this seems kind of loosey-goosey. I don't feel like I'm on. It's very comfortable once you get the hang of things. And sometimes students just, whether they're aware of it or not, they're kind of shutting down in their head a little bit and they're just sitting around watching. You have to be engaged. You have to be interactive, okay? Another thing I need to let you know is if you're thinking this is really slow, well, at first it is slow because I'm teaching you how the class works. But you need to understand I'm not a calendar teacher. So the stuff I have on the calendar, understand that's very flexible. Things can move. Okay, so don't go thinking, well, we got to get this done. No, I kind of go by, the feel of the class, how we're doing and stuff. So for instance, this lab you're starting now, the tube lab, it's going to feel like it's taken forever. Okay, well, that's because you're learning how to do labs in this class. So just, don't worry about that. Okay. So I'm kind of teaching you the ways, in this first unit, I'm teaching you the ways that we're going to be communicating in this class, like through graphs and collecting data in a way to decrease errors and stuff like that, okay? So let's see here. I'm trying to remember exactly what it is I wanted to talk about. So in this first lab, I'm going to talk a little bit more about in this first lab. The reason we're doing this lab is I wanted to show you how the way labs work in the class in a way that you don't also have to worry about physics so much, okay? I don't want you to have to worry about, hey, I'm learning how to do the lab and I'm learning physics. No, we're not going to do both at the same time. We're just going to learn how to do labs. So all labs we do in this year, I will first introduce an interesting phenomena I consider interesting. You probably won't. And then we'll talk about, hey, what are some things that I could change about this that might affect this interesting phenomena? And you guys will brainstorm a whole bunch of ideas. You talked about brainstorming yesterday. It's a free flow of ideas. Nobody can critique. Nobody can laugh. No noises, whatever. In fact, it's hard for me to write them all down on the board because you're so fast. Put them all on there, okay? We eventually run out of those ideas. Then we discuss about those ideas. What are the things that I can actually test? Like, I'm sure people came up with the idea of, hey, I know I'm in the band if temperature changes or humidity changes. I know that affects the pitch. Well, that's a great idea. I can't test it. So we'll put those ideas that I can't test. Maybe you could test in college, but you can't test here because we don't have the equipment, okay? So we'll put those in one category that we can't test. Those are later considerations to think about. There's other things you can test, like maybe somebody said different lengths of tubes. Well, that's something I can test. I have that ability. I've got that equipment. And then finally, there's other things like, well, how hard I hit the tube or where I hit the tube. Well, those are more like procedures. Let's all do it the same way. Let's all hit the tube at the end with our palm. Well, that's how it is for every lab. We're going to talk about interesting phenomena, things that we can test, things that we can't test, procedures, and then we'll get into the lab and actually start collecting data. Sometimes that data will be numerical. In this lab, it's not numerical, but later on it'll be numerical. You will read about how to collect that data and display it into a table so that everybody is doing the same thing. That's called convention, following a convention. You'll also read about how to graph that so that we're all doing it the same way. That's called a convention. And then from those graphs, you'll be able to find mathematical models. Those mathematical models, those are the physics equations we're going to be using this year. After you get all that stuff done, then you'll come back from the lab situation and we will whiteboard those one at a time. I'll tell you, hey, let's whiteboard the pitch versus color. We'll do that first. We'll look at everybody's graphs. If we all agree that must be the right answer, we'll move on. If we don't agree, then we'll talk about it and we'll have maybe a group reproduce their lab and they'll show it to us. Eventually, we'll reach consensus. After we get consensus, then that's the point where we've already discussed it. We know what the right answers are. Then the next day is when the lab will be due, okay? So that's a little bit different than other classes. This way, you know what the right answers are before you ever turn it in. So theoretically, you should get the right answer. You should also know that for labs, the lab response, which is at the back of your packet, that lab response, which is due the very next day, I will generally only pick one per group. I'll give you about 5 minutes. I'll say 5 minutes to kind of collaborate. And so I'm only going to pick one per group. You better talk about your labs. You need to advocate for yourself. So if you got one person over there, they don't have anything down, you need to advocate for yourself and say, hey, bud, I'm sorry, I don't want you to hurt my grade. I want you to turn your own in separately, okay? And, or hopefully better than that, that person will go, hey, I don't want to hurt your grade. I'm going to turn in mine separately. Personally, I will have a conversation with that person and they will be penalized. They will get a penalty for not being prepared. That is unacceptable. And further, let's say everybody is prepared. If you're just sitting back and you're not discussing, I don't want to hear later on that when I picked up one at random that, oh, they had the wrong answer, but I had the right answer. Too bad. This class is about advocating for yourself and learning from one another. You need to be discussing everything. You need to talk about everything, okay? So your purpose is you want to get a higher grade, but truly what my purpose is I want you talking. I want you to learn from one another because more than likely that person has the wrong answer is because they're thinking a certain way. Well, I want you to discuss that, not only for their benefit, but for your benefit too. All right. So a little preview about after this tube lab. So once you've done the tube lab, then you kind of know, okay, this is how labs work. I feel pretty good about it. I don't like how long it takes, but I feel pretty good that I have the right answers. I get a good grade on it because I know what the right answers are. The next thing that you're going to do is you're going to read about experimental design and graphical analysis. That's linked on the Canvas calendar. It's going to talk about how to put your data in a table that is following conventions, how to graph it that's following conventions. In fact, you should have done part of that already. But more importantly, in that packet, it also talks about how to linearize your graphs. Probably none of you know how to linearize your graphs. Maybe one of you does. But you need to read that section because we're going to be doing that quite a bit this year. And that's how you're going to find the mathematical models, the physics equations. And so it's really important you do that part. We're going to practice the skills and worksheets B and C before we do any quiz. That way you kind of know, and we're whiteboarding those, by the way. You'll do them first on your own, and then we'll whiteboard them to make sure that you get the idea. You can ask questions. You better advocate for yourself because remember, I don't lecture. So you need to do them, practice them, come into class and whiteboard them. You don't have to have it right. You just need to try. And then ask questions, and that way you should be good to go in the quiz. There's another packet linked on the Canvas calendar called Measurements Uncertainty. It's great reading for people without that have insomnia. Seriously though, I recommend that you read it because it talks about sig figs and how we deal with sig figs in physics and engineering. It's different than in chemistry. Okay, later on in this same unit where I'm teaching you about how we do physics, how we communicate, we're going to combine all these skills together. Now we know how to do labs. Now we know how to linearize. So now we need to do a lab that we're collecting mathematical numbers, and we need to actually get some kind of mathematical equations. And we need to see, does this process work? The reason why we need to do that is part of this unit is I'm trying to build trust in you. Trust that I'm here for you, and I kind of know whether you're working or not. I know if you're engaged or not, and I'm giving you plenty of opportunities to get engaged. But also I want you to trust in the process that, hey, this discovery thing, this actually works. I kind of like it. It's not so bad. I'm learning the same thing as through lecture, maybe not as efficiently, but it's working better. It's actually sticking in the head better, and I can apply that better. That's how I know it's working better. So we're going to do a lab that ties that together. We get numerical data, and we're going to see if the mathematical equation is the right equation. So spoiler alert, it does work. You'll find out that, hey, that equation is exactly right, okay? And we'll also talk about uncertainty during that lab too. So now at this point, you will know, how we do labs, how we whiteboard it, that we, or how we linearize it, how we whiteboard it, we reach consensus, and then we turn it in. So we're going to practice that a little bit more, and then we'll actually do a real physics lab. In that real physics lab, we will do the same thing. I'll show you all the same thing, and we will get the right equation, the right physics equation. Okay, so you'll just have to trust in the process, or hopefully I built that trust in. So that's what this entire unit is, okay? The last thing I need to let you know is I don't really teach from a textbook. I don't give you textbook reading, but if you really want to have a textbook, so I really recommend this, what you do. First we learn in class, and then if you want to go back and look in the textbook and hopefully then things will click and you'll be like, oh, I know that stuff already. It's really not a good idea to read the textbook first and then learn in class. That's not a good idea. Learn in class, then textbook. That's kind of a good idea. But if you want a textbook, what I was going to say is you can either pick one up yourself separately in a different AP class, or you can go to Treasure. Okay. Anyway, so thank you for watching this video. I really look forward to you. See, I'm alive. I'll be there eventually. All right. Talk to you later. Bye.